Hey there, welcome to this final part of our introduction to Elite Dangerous, the Playguide. Now it moves on to the final section, that is mining, and it will also dovetail into the final part of the combat, and it will move on to ways to survive this game and actually ways that we can die. So that's the final chapter. Let's return to the game. We're at Kale Landing, or Chow Landing as I like to call it, in the Kale. Let's head back to Old Tear and let's just dump whatever cargo that we've managed to carry, usually a shipload of palladium, and let's make our way back. But on our way to Solo Orbiter, you may notice an unidentified signal source. These are scattered semi-randomly around each solar system, so you'll have to explore these individually. So let's use our usual boosting method and let's get ready to jump out of Super Cruise. Signal source reveals a cache of gold, and all we need to do is to pick up this gold, and it's a free cargo, but unfortunately we will be wanted if we do that, so we'll have to be prepared for that. At the moment our cargo hold is full, so let's switch on the cargo hatch and we can even eject cargo from the right hand panel. So if we eject a few of these we can collect the gold. Unfortunately, that gold is protected at the moment by a fleet of pirates who duly attack me, and as you can see my shield, the first ring has disappeared already, and it looks like at least 3 major pilots are attacking my shield. I can't boost out of there, I can't seem to close my weapons, and the shields have gone. I can't seem to hyperspace out, and I'm pressing the buttons. Wow! In an emergency measure, we can try to quit the game and save and exit that, and if we get away with that, just speeding up this footage a little, when we reload and go back into the game by moving to start, hopefully we will be able to reload from where we left off, and any structure left on that ship will remain. You can see we are down to 19% hull integrity, but our shields are now restored. So that was an ambush. If I hadn't have got out of there I might not have survived, and so that's the very first method I will cover of how to die in this game. Yes, unexplored signal sources can reveal instant death, so let's skip on to the station. So you have to be prepared, and one of those ways is to press the exit key, the escape key, and try and save and quit. Unfortunately that will give us some seconds to do that, and I think if we blow up within those seconds then we'll blow up anyway. So it isn't foolproof to quit out and reload the game. In the meantime we have survived that encounter by using the escape trick, and now let's land and hope that we can repair ourselves without too much cash withdrawal. Eventually we managed to land. Let's head on into the familiar computer, and while we are doing that let's enter the cargo bay itself, because we'll need to do a little bit of outfitting, and outfitting to instigate the mining in this game is certainly necessary. You can see it's very much important to repair our ship, but look at that hull integrity, virtually complete. Only the systems within that ship really needed to be fixed, so let's repair all. And really 7,000-8,000 credits to repair all of these isn't too bad value at all. And while we are here, before we set off on another long adventure, let's make sure that we have enough ammunition on board. We used up a shield cell bank, but not that that did much under that attack. Let's restock that, and let's check out the commodities market, because we do, after all that, have a shipload of palladium to offload. Let's get the money back from that, and that might give us a few 100,000 credits, maybe up to 1 million. We're actually on 2.8 million at the moment. Let's sell these, and that puts us over the 4 million barrier. So that's a clear million just by selling palladium, it appears, and that's paid for all that damage. So I'd certainly recommend having maybe 4 times the rebuy cost of our ship in floating cash. And I'd certainly recommend buying enough arms upgrades to be able to defend ourselves, and of course those 2 shield boosters come in handy under normal circumstances. The kill warrant scanner makes sure it gets all that cash, and the point defense makes sure that no amount of missiles reach their target. Taking a look at the internals, we can also upgrade our shell, and we can reinforce the alloy. And that is, well, that is almost 3 million credits. That is very expensive, and it's certainly not worth doing that, because if we have a strong shield, then those munitions shouldn't even reach the internals. And look at that, very expensive indeed on this particular ASP to upgrade that. So it's much better having the shield cell banks and the shield generator. I have a C5 shield generator, and it's always important to get the right class rating. If we have a number 5 slot, then use it, and the bigger the better when it comes to the shield. So you can see at the moment I'm swapping for different weapons. Let's try, well, the mining laser we're going to need if we're going to do some mining, and there are various types of mining laser, but the basic mining laser will do for us. The cheapest, and in this case the cheapest will do the good job, and we can even upgrade to fragment cannons as well if we want to take on guys at closer range. They are quite good value for money, and we do get lots of ammo for those, and again the cannons are great for close range as well. But let's not lose sight of why we are here. Let's just buy that mining laser, and it's very cheap at 6,000 credits, and that will then appear on our craft. Whilst we are here, let's just buy a fragment cannon, and let's see how much of an upgrade that would be on our combat power as we move into combat. And let's check out our fire groups to make sure all those are lined up correctly. We still have most of the things on fire group 1, and you can see the mining laser will also be triggered. Not that that will do much on fire group 1. On fire group 2 we have the kill warrant scanner with the frame shift interdictor, so we can interdict those guys and then scan them, and the shield cell bank is on number 3. If we have 2 shield cell banks, we can assign those to 2 different function buttons, i.e. 2 different mouse buttons, and then you can have 2 shield cell banks, and that is another way of getting yourself out of trouble. If you use the activation key, it will launch both banks together, so you can untie those onto 2 mouse buttons, and that's a great way to survive. It certainly gives us double the shield cell bank ability. Now let's set off to find our prey, and in this case let's find some gold. And unfortunately, if we type gold into the Navicom, it will find this system. Unfortunately, there is no gold in this system. There is just a planetoid named gold, and the fact that there is no ringed systems, there are no gas giants, there are no bodies with an asteroid field or a belt cluster, not even a belt cluster in the zone, so we cannot mine something without a belt cluster of some sort. But let's chart a course to that place. Let's set off and let's get there. And once again, while the ship itself is undocking, I like to chart the route on the Navicom. Don't forget, if you've restarted the game, you'll have to select the fastest route again, and you do not want to take the slow route to any of these places. But when we get there, of course, there are no mineral extraction sites. There are, however, 3 conflict zones. 2 of those are low and 1 of those is high. Let's make our way to one of the low intensity zones, and I don't really trust the high ones unless you have a python or an anaconda, and apparently there isn't much difference between the 2. But let's check out this option, and we'll actually choose, well, the first option. It doesn't really make much difference in a local war which one you choose, because both of those will be rebel sides, probably funded by the same alliance, the same allegiance, i.e. the Federation, and we're in deep Federation space here. And you can see I've chosen the right side because there are more green, there are more friendlies than there are reds. Start by attacking a cobra. A cobra isn't a bad start, it isn't worth a great deal, but it isn't a hard enemy to take down. You can see it has no shields remaining, and let's just take in this magnificent light show.
Target shields offline.
To watch out for those guys returning, and you have to watch those kilometers, because if they return at ramming speed they can ram us out of existence, and that is another way, the second way perhaps, that we will die in this game. If we ram an opponent, if we have minimum shields, of course, then we don't really do ourselves any favours. And look at that, the enemy is running away. Do we boost after the enemy? If you boost after the enemy and boost into that enemy, well, that won't do you any favours either.
Target shields online. Target shields.
Trying to get in a few volleys of those fragment cannons before our craft gets too far away. You can see the point defence is already blowing away the mines, perhaps, whatever that thing laid down to try and defend itself. And you can see, even at a distance, those fragment cannons will still inflict some damage. Let's just recharge our energy. Our shields are still on maximum, and so we can hopefully take this thing down with all the time in the world. Activate that mining laser in triumph when we see that guy blowing up, and well, that's our first kill of the day, and that's the first one of the millions that we can accrue fighting in a war zone. Let's take on another ship, and it happens to be another Cobra. You can see not that many ships in the area, and if we are a middle of the road ship like an ASP, then it is good to take on middle of the road ships, not really Eagles and Sidewinders, because they aren't really worth the ammunition. So we have to consider our targets, as I saw on the last part. And as you are about to see in this part, here is yet another Python. Let's try to get that guy at close range. Let's try and blow him up. Unfortunately, boosting in this case was counterproductive, and we boosted almost straight past our target, and again never boost into the path of those things. And look at all those attacking spacecraft. last thing we need is to plough straight into any space debris that is left by the exploding ship. And yes, huge ships will leave huge carcasses floating around in space. They won't do much damage, but if you don't have any pips on your shield and you're already being attacked at the same time, then, well, that leads to trouble. Seen in earlier parts of this Playguide, it is also very easy to ram into the sides of the ships, and of course ramming into the sides of those is completely possible chasing after a target when everybody's flying around all over. And when the target reaches its lowest point, that is when it's most vulnerable, but that is also when it can frame shift drive away. Tried my best to keep up with that thing, but again, you have to watch those escaping, follow that escape vector and finish those off. I tried to let the other guys finish the ASP off for me. That did not work. It escaped, and that means a loss of ammo, and it means a loss of that cash. Let's try again. Here's another Python. Let's recharge all our systems, and let's lay into that thing hell for leather. And this time let's get a little bit closer, and this time let's not try to waste so much ammo. Me to point out what's about to happen now. Yes, he's about to frame shift out of there.
Target shields offline.
Each war zone will be a hive of activity, but despite that, it isn't always easy money, especially if you don't go in for the kill. And we have learnt that particularly the hard way now, letting Pythons escape at the last moment. And well, I didn't follow the other Python because I knew exactly what he would do, and I thought there's no way I could get there in time. Sometimes it's worth trying, and that's a loss of money that's escaped. But that's us finished now with the war zones. It's time to pack away our weapons, and then it's time to press the M key and let's get back to somewhere civilized, hopefully somewhere with an extraction zone, and then we can get on and mine a few minerals. Let's get back to the kill, and we really do know that there are mineral extraction sites in that area. It's very close to Altair, so it means we can extract things, and we can return to Altair if we get into any trouble. And the Kale often has wars, as we have seen, not always, but there are war areas around a lot of systems, even deep within the Federation, as we have seen, and it's always worth popping into those, even just to dispatch a couple of easy enemies. And I think we managed to get rid of 3 in that particular sortie. Not quite sure, we can't check, because kills in war zones appear as combat bonds and not as bounties, as you can see. There are many mineral extraction sites in this vicinity, and well, there's 3 there I've managed to discover. You can see I haven't actually explored the rest of this, and we will get around to exploring perhaps the most native system in the Federation. I haven't actually explored it, but we can get some cash for doing that. and maybe that will reveal a few more mineral extraction sites. And let's not get carried away, of course. If you do overshoot something, all you need to do is change trajectory, press the 5 key, get yourself down to 50%, and then when you are back on target you can press the 75 key again, and as long as the speed is in the blue zone when you're approaching, that's fine, and you can hang on to that 75% until you get somewhere near that target. Even though this is a mineral extraction site, you can hang on in there, and then as soon as it says that there's 4 seconds to go, you can go ahead and hit that boost again, and if you are quick you'll be able to jump out of Super Cruise, and it's great to see these rings appearing. And again, for the final time, I again apologise for any stutter on this video. This is simply because I'm trying to record it and play it and everything else at the same time. So this is not the game, it is definitely my recording software which was the problem, and I haven't even been able to record that in high resolution, but you can see the clusters appearing as we get closer. So let's avoid the main mineral extraction site for the moment, because that is usually chock-a-block with baddies, and of course pirates in this case will blow us up the moment we try to stop. So we'll have to fly away from those hotspots into a quiet zone and pick a rock at our leisure. Using the boost, I can make sure that we are somewhere near some kind of clear zone. You can see a white mark on the radar. That's perhaps a stone cluster, a chip off a boulder that is ready to be collected, or as we have seen, it can be a canister of gold, which is a trap. So let's ignore that, and when we get somewhere near the target, you can see foes appearing on the radar. They will attack, and they are too close for comfort. You can see more enemies appearing, and all of a sudden, just as we select the boulder that we want, we are now swamped with enemies, which is great. It means now we'll have to boost out of here if we want to find another spot, and hopefully another quiet spot to explore without so much activity. Having found a suitable picnic site, let's camp down for the night and let's shoot some rocks. Yes, it's time to rock in this game, and you can blast rocks to your heart's content. As soon as you are close enough, you'll see an impact mark appearing on the rock, and if you blast away and listen to the sound effects, you can hear a sound effect of a fragment breaking off. And yes, you can make all kinds of pretty patterns and write your name in these things to your heart's content. Write number 2 and make stick insects, things like that. But eventually, I think maybe 6, maybe 7, 8 rocks will break off maximum, and there is a finite supply of fragments on any one of these boulders, so you can't just mine these away forever. But let's just clear the last few, and let's see if we can mine those and instigate the mining operation. That's the last few done. You can see all those fragments on the radar. By pressing the T key, we can select those and collect them. Unfortunately, you can see refinery required appears highlighted in red on the left, and that means that we cannot even pick up these fragments because we need an item known as a refinery. Yes, you can't even open the cargo hatch and collect those because they are uncollectible. So what we have to do, yes, we can scan those, we can see those very clearly, but what we'll have to do is return to Altair and get ourselves a refinery. We we have bought ourselves an E1 refinery. It was the cheapest on offer, and we can use that space to fill that up. So let's check out the E1 refinery. Let's see if that will be more appropriate to mine with. And let's fly out again to another lonely island out in the middle of nowhere, and let's just fly around and pick an appropriate boulder. Once we have found our sweetheart, we can then court her by blasting away with that mining laser and gouging out a few rocks. So let's try that. It doesn't really matter the pattern that you choose to try and get some rock crystals out of these mineral clusters, but you can fire away, and I like to basically cover that thing randomly and sometimes saw away like a saw that thing. Sometimes making triangles works, but trying to spread out your power usually gives you the best chance of gaining some ore. So this is us now moving sheepishly towards a rock of ore, and let's see what it is. Let's see if we can collect it. The ship's computer will now tell us that those resources need to be allocated, and if we have resources unallocated in what is known as the hopper, part of the refinery that is, then unfortunately we'll have to allocate those before we can collect another. Each refinery comes with a number of hoppers, and a hopper is simply a bucket that we can throw in minerals. This particular refinery comes with one hopper, and one hopper means we can collect one mineral, in this case uranite, and the other mineral will have to be thrown away, thrown out, and because some of these rocks contain more than one mineral, it really is essential to have something with more than one hopper. So you can see one hopper there, it is now empty. We dumped all our cargo and we return to Altair to pick up another refinery, the E1 being practically useless. So let's sell that, get that money, and let's try and buy another. And there are a huge range of refineries on offer, and certainly more refineries than guns sometimes. So let's check the range out and let's see what we can buy. The number of refinery hoppers, known as bins in this game, will appear on the right hand panel. You can see sometimes 3, 4, 6, 8, and for the most expensive you can buy 7 there for 700,000, and it's important to find the best value for money. Of course, some will be more expensive than others, and so let's just buy this one, and over 2 million credits each for a refinery. Let's hope that's worth it. At least now we have those 8 slots to work with. Let's get back out there and let's try and find another boulder. Having found yet another candidate, it's time to take away the engine power as much as possible and put all your power into the systems, because at least then that will give you a shield. And if you fly really slowly, or if you stop like this, then that shouldn't be too much of a problem. But if you have too much power into the engines, then that will be a problem. So you can see there I am actually over my accumulated energy target, so I am switching off an item so that I can switch on my cargo hatch. We'll need the cargo hatch to scoop up these minerals. Let's just get a little closer and let's start hammering away. difficult task now is to sweep all those up off the carpet and throw those into the bin. Using our old friend the gingerly creeping up on the accelerator technique, we can hang around 13 to 15 and that should be fine. In this case, that mineral fragment revealed some coltan, mostly coltan, with some uranite as well, and don't forget we'll have to use the refining technique to identify that, and that will allocate that to a hopper, and then from then on any one of those minerals will then go straight into that bin, and when those bins are full, i.e. it gives us a ton, then that ton will be shipped into our main cargo area, and then we'll have a ton of items to sell. It's important not to select the eject cargo button in the refinery because you can eject your cargo, and you can even eject one of the things that you've just harvested, and that's no good. And let's speed up that footage, and let's collect all those fragments, watching of course that we don't collide into the asteroid itself, and collect all those fragments in. It's time consuming, but it's rewarding when you collect all those up, and then we select another asteroid, another boulder, whatever that may be, a fragment. Let's get right up close and personal to that, speed up that footage, circle that, and grab those fragments. The fourth way in which we can die in this game is to boost into an asteroid, and of course that doesn't do our shields any good. For this reason, it's important to remember to put on the ship's lights whilst in one of these extraction zones, and even though the ship lights, which I've assigned to my L key, they don't really give us much light except for when we are really up close, but if we are really up close to an asteroid, that's the danger point, and so of course the ship's lights can make a difference, and they might save that shield. You can see it didn't take long to recharge that shield, and one shield cell bank took care of that. But if we boost into an asteroid, then that's the third way we can die in this game, and I've certainly been known to boost straight into an asteroid and only just survive it. If we boost into the station, we'll get killed, and if we boost into anything, we'll virtually get killed, so don't boost into anything. But out of everything in the game, of course the asteroids are the most unforgiving. They don't have a nice big fat shield to bounce off, no, they are very strict and hard, and they will slap us on the backside if we try to interfere. So always give asteroids a nice wide berth, and again, if we use the ship lights, that might just illuminate half of the problem. Many of the mineral fragments will also hug the mother like glue, and so it's hard sometimes to sweep around the outside edge and collect those without getting a slap. Let's run around once again and sweep up those fragments. Hopefully we can do that without getting blown up. It isn't particularly easy sometimes. Sometimes we are at the mercy of the natural laws of the universe, but it's a good job we have the heads-up display to clearly show us what we have and whether it's worth collecting. And you'll be glad to know that there isn't too much mining left in this mining section, because mining tends to be a little bit slow. And even though it's slow to mine, you'll find when you have mined maybe 1 ton at a time, and you get back there, you may find you've wasted, well, days in fact mining. And of course it's not very profitable when you could have spent hours basically in a war zone or trading, or maybe a day with those rares to get 1 million back. And so the mining at this point in the game, don't forget this game is in constant development, but at this point in the game's development I don't think the mining really pays off. After a lot more time and a lot more mining, we end up with some property, and our property is 3 tons coltan, lepidolite and uranite. And we also have some part commodities, and if those were in gold or palladium right now, I'd be happy, or at least happier. You can see you can have those part commodities in there, as well as your normal cargo space, because that cargo bay will then be the refinery, and we spent quite some money on a refinery. We've also spent quite some more money because we've just returned to Altair. We are now scanning the locale system, and I'm probably getting on your nerves calling it that by now, but anyway, we are finally getting to scan and finding those mineral extraction sites all around this system. And it's something that I perhaps should have done all the way back, seeing as this system is one of the most visited systems that I visit. And so you can see I've accumulated that trade data simply by scanning and trading that information back to a station. Unfortunately, that station will have to be some distance away, but you can see I have now scanned finally all the rocks in the area. So what we need to do is fly back some distance, and for this of course we'll fly back to Lewitton Star, and there we'll offload that data. And thanks to another advance in the game, we have advanced towards another breakthrough in technology. It will now list out all the systems that we've advanced scanned in this game on the right hand panel. Oh dear, we seem to have missed the landing spot again. Well, let's not sulk, let's just get in there, let's land, and let's check out our data, in this case cartographics, and we can finally trade in one of the most local systems in the Sol system for, well, some cash there, 35,000 credits. That's not too bad, and they've raised the hike of those valuations in the game. Let's check out to see if that has an effect on our exploration data, and you can see just about we have 802 systems visited, and we have 683 of those scanned with the detailed surface scanner. And when we confirm those and check those in, we'll now return and we'll now find the systems stay the same of course, but we now have 712 paid in with the detailed surface scanner. Unfortunately, while I was scanning those, I also bought the advanced discovery scanner, and that was completely pointless because I'd already discovered all the systems I need in this area. So those millions meant I was under the rebuy cost, and that is another aspect of this game. If you simply have too much cargo and buy too many of those upgrades, you'll fall under the insurance. That's the rebuy cost, and if you can't rebuy, then unfortunately you'll be struggling, because when you rebuy you'll only find a basic sidewinder if you can't afford the insurance. Meanwhile, let's speed this footage up, and we've found a planet that many of us probably know already. This is Earth, and before we leave these play guides, let's just give this a quick look. We'll be visiting Europe and give away the excitement of seeing your own home, so just fly around Indonesia and the Philippines, and we'll take a look at the Earth from this angle. You can see it's all there, and clouds move and the atmosphere is present, and when we get a landing technology built into this game, we should be able to land, and we should be able to fly around these clouds no problem. But the game's development has promised that, and that's still to come. In the meantime, this area is fun also because they've added yet another feature, and that is Earth lights, or rather lights around colonized areas on the faces of planets, and those features will be highlighted on the dark side. So let's just fly around there and appreciate all those lights. And I'm not sure whether these match up to real places. Perhaps they do, and perhaps this is about to be linked into Google Earth, so you can literally fly around. But in the meantime, we can see that there is activity, and if we check out the external camera, we can see almost like we're flying down into that. And if we fly down too far into that, we'll drop out of Super Cruise, of course, back into real time. Life seems rather majestic on Earth from this point of view, and everything seems calm and quiet all over the shop. But you can see Abe Lincoln Station. Let's skip on. All the usual stations are of course around Earth, but that doesn't give away the fact that war is on the horizon, and there is a massive ship parked on the corner of Earth just to make sure that the war doesn't stretch that far. And you can see we're approaching the Mikhail Gorbachev station, but right at the top you can see Capital Ship. And Capital Ship, unlike Capital Planet on Achenar or Achenar, the Capital Ship is a huge, massive ship in space, and that will appear in war zones and blast all heck out of other craft. And that's the largest craft in this game so far. And so let's fly down. Let's take a low pass and let's see if we can fly down and check this ship out. For this I'm going to move to the nose and then of course quickly turn around. If we glance down we can see the last of the vessel disappearing beneath, and then given a few seconds we can then turn head for tail and check out that vessel. In this case the Capital Ship is huge of course, and it is well defended, and a bunch of fighters will emerge from that if we should get too close. But for the moment let's just see the detail with the background of the Earth. That music means we've alerted the presence of the patrol, and you can see the red guys in the background of the radar. That means I just need to hightail out into Super Cruise and I'll be perfectly safe just like all the other intimate encounters in this game. They happen in real time, and in Super Cruise, the only thing that happens is you can interdict guys back to real time. So let's jump out of there and become perfectly safe. And I don't think anything can harm us in Super Cruise, because even if we head towards a planet, that will jump us out back into real time. I guess if you fly too far into the sun and get too hot, that's another way to die. And it's certainly easy to overheat sometimes having a battle near a sun when you're trying to refuel the craft. So to avoid dying in this game, I'd certainly recommend watching the radar as you refuel, particularly in the nice craft that you want to save. But the final death scenario I will cover in this section of the play guide revolves a space station and insurance. At the moment, because of buying those advanced detailed surface scanners and everything else, we are massively under the rebuy cost, as you can see, and that is very hazardous indeed, and I would not recommend that under any circumstances. But what happens if you fail to land at the station? Well, the station will give us a certain time limit to get out of there before it blows us up, and then in that case we have two options. We can either try and hang around there and risk getting blown up, or we can boost out of the letterbox. But what happens if there is a Type 9 sneaking through the letterbox very, very slowly, and you make an evasive decision to avoid that, and eventually you crash into the side of the station? Well, that's what happened to me. I took too long to land, and rather than getting blown up, I decided to boost for the exit, and I crashed into the side of the station. If we take a look at the right hand box, we can see the game actually gives us enough insurance to buy back our craft, as long as we deselect all these options that we bought for it. And as long as we deselect all of these, it should be possible to buy back the ASP. If you don't, then the option won't be highlighted to buy back, and it only just gives us enough cash to do that. And so if you don't deselect all of these, then it will appear like you cannot buy the ASP back. But apparently you can always buy back your ship. But in my blind panic, you can see I'm deselecting all these options, but I didn't select them all, unfortunately, and so I was still short of rebuying my ASP. And in that kind of blind panic, you can see on the right hand box I should have 1,000 credits remaining, but in my blind panic I decided the only other option was to buy a Sidewinder, and that gives us precious little cash back and the worst ship in the game. So without any other option, I was completely blind, and I'm still struggling to see how I can rebuy, having, according to my mind, deselected everything, but that was a mistake. But if you don't have the insurance, then you're going to have to start again. And the insurance is critical in this game. As you can see, we are in a Sidewinder, and unfortunately everything looks pretty similar to how it was before. We are still a warrant officer, we are still trailblazing away there, and we still have the usual ship controls, but unfortunately all our credits have gone. That includes all our transactions as well on the left hand panel, so even if the Empire owed us £1 billion before, we cannot now claim it, and we now have 303,000 credits in the bank. That's amazing, from the 25 million that we had before. So of course that scenario would be pretty deflating to anybody, having crashed into the station, but the station scenario is one of those death scenarios in this game. For this reason, it is important to have insurance against the insurance, and in this game I still have my Type 6 in Luton Star. This Sidewinder we are in at the moment was actually used on the very first episode of this guide to take us all the way out to Arivate, and that had a very large frameshift drive indeed, and so I simply picked that up and flew that back here. And it's unfortunate that we couldn't select our Type 6 when we died. To to combat against destruction, I also have a cobra that I collected along the way, and I'd certainly recommend having a number of ships waiting. Certainly you can use smaller ships to access outposts and things like that, but for the most part let's just sell everything that we have on this sidewinder, the one that we brought back to Revate, and the one that I actually bought to start this review in the first place. Let's just sell all the weapons that we have for that, and anything in the internals, probably the frameshift drive is the only thing which I can actually sell. And we also have a fuel scoop as well, but if we retract that all the way back to E, the lowest, then we'll get that cash back, and that won't affect the ship cost too much when we come to sell that. And the B2 fuel scoop, it looks like we forgot to sell the B2 fuel scoop, but all we have to do is to select the next craft, and we can jump into that for free, of course, because we already own it. And then it's just a small matter of returning to the bulletin board and selling off the Cobra. You can see modules exceeded. The craft in this dock are very much stripped down, because as soon as I bought my ASP I stripped them all down so that I could afford parts for my ASP. So we have the Type 6 and we have the Sidewinder. Let's get rid of that and let's retrieve that money. It's going to be a long hike back up to the 20 odd million that we were on before, but let's start out, let's sell that Sidewinder, and now we are in a Cobra. It's time to exit this and strip off everything that we bought for the Cobra. So just like Frontier Development's former game Frontier, released on PC and the Amiga, it's best to sell off your ships completely empty and downgrade those down to the minimum, and that leaves us with the Type 6, which is probably the best ship and the best step up towards the ASP, even though that Type 6 is probably worth over 1 million credits in this game. The ASP is probably worth over 6, so there is a long way to go before we get there, and of course the prices fluctuate and it might even depend on where you go. But now that we're in the Type 6, we have some credits. It's time to spend almost 900,000 credits that we have to get us back into this game. And it's speculate to accumulate at this point. And the first thing I will do, I've noticed that the cargo racks are very much depleted. And with the Type 6, it actually gives us a lot more than the ASP. So we can have more cargo racks to our heart's desire, and that's great. And that leaves us a couple of spaces left for 1 or 2 utilities, and of course it's important to get the best shield generator, because defense is the best offense, because if you get your butt kicked you need something to absorb those hits. So it's sometimes best to take the hits and wade straight in there. So it's important to make a wise decision as far as the shield generator, and make sure that hull mass is above the current hull mass that we have, so that shield generator works. And so in this case we'll go for what we can afford, and we can sell the basic discovery scanner, of course, for 1,000 credits, even though that will pay for itself. Those few thousand credits on discovery will really need a lot more than that to get anywhere in this game. And we'll also need some kind of defense system, and so let's spend just a bit more money and get those beam lasers. It sometimes is a little bit wasted cash because we only have the class 2 lasers, and class 2 lasers are a lot like using a fly swat against a bunch of elephants, and so that won't do us much good upgrading that. But stepping that aside, I'm actually tooling ourselves up for a rares run, so 1 trip around the planets with the rares run should net 1 million credits, and maybe 5 of those will give us eventually back that ASP. Now we are down to virtually 1 ship in the game. Let's leave the station and make sure that we don't have anything against us. Everything is fully repaired and refueled. We can now gingerly exit and make our way back to Altair to pick up those rares. And gingerly is the word at this stage. But what happens if you are trying to take off and you cannot? Well, at this point I've upgraded all my systems, but I didn't reckon upon the fact that I didn't have enough power to power those, and the timer is, well, ticking down now because we have no way of thrusting out of here without the power. So what I'm doing is trying to shut down all unnecessary systems to give us back that power enough to have thrust capability. And of course, if we don't exit the station in time, we'll get blown up. So it's important to not hang around, and certainly do not boost in and out of letterboxes. You've seen me doing that often enough. You can see on the radar no ships in front. I could boost here to my heart's content, but I won't. I'll play it safe because this is my last ship. As soon as I get the ASP, I can put this back into storage, and a few battles in a war zone should mean that we can get back to the target of some high action. But it isn't over until it's over in this game, and thank God I had a backup plan with the Type 6. Now that we are out of the no fire zone, we can check out our property, and in this case the kilowattage, or rather the megawattage, is rather mega lacking, and we do not have the power to basically get out our system. So if we haven't gone through the modules, this is the very last thing we'll be going through, basically the module power assignments. And it's important to get the power assignments correct in this game. The higher the level, the more they will drop out if power is the premium. So the ones on number 1 will remain, and the ones on number 2 should remain under most conditions. 3 will deteriorate and drop out as soon as we are under attack. In this case, unless we have a 4, or we have any number of modules which drop out in sequence. So what I'm doing, I'm powering back on my modules one at a time, and starting with the essential ones. Of course, the fuel scoop is completely inessential unless we want to use that. The shield boosters are completely and utterly useless because our shield is barely up, and the beam lasers, we can't fire those either. But at least we've got the shield up.
Capacity exceeded.
We're still trying to get those organized and get those power usage units sorted out. You can see the frame shift drive is on a high usage, and the shield boosters, again, you don't need those, or the shield cell bank at this stage. So there isn't much I can do. All I can do is to power on back to that station, and when we land, hopefully we can take on some more power. We made it, and gingerly once again let's make our way towards the landing pad. And you may notice we are aiming straight down the middle of that pad. Yes, this game works perfectly. We can now fly straight down the middle into the landing pad itself. So unfortunately that does not help my landing abilities one little bit. Let's do our usual back shuffle into the right spot and place ourselves down. Thank you for viewing my play guide to Elite Dangerous. I hope you've enjoyed our journeys through the cosmos, and perhaps I'll see you on maybe another Lemon Amiga or Lemon 64 review soon. Thank you.